We're really excited to welcome you to this panel where we're going to hear from the creators who each have a unique take on episodic gaming. We've got games that follow chapters, other games that revolve within the same familial world. So they're going to explain what kind of episodic gaming they do and talk about the highlights and lowlights of providing that kind of content to their customers. So I'll pass you over to Dave.
Hi. Okay, cool. Hi, welcome everybody. First things first, a bit about the format. I've got some pre-prepared questions because I'm rubbish with memory stuff. So I'm going to be going through those. And then at the end, we'll see if we can save about 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so for questions, if anybody's got any, and cover that. But before we begin, or as part of the beginning, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves.
My name's Bob, and this is my lovely wife, Nick. We own Hysteria Escape Rooms and Unsolved Mysteries Escape Rooms, both in Kent. We started in the industry six and a half years ago. We are in the middle of building our 10th experience right now. As Dave alluded to, some of our games have chapters and episodes, which we'll, I'm sure, get into. Would you like to say anything, darling?
Just what he said. We started off as a normal escape room company with a normal format of building 3 games with different styles. And then everything that we kind of learned, we took into a new premises and wanted to create one long experience. So that's how we came to the episodic gaming format. That's pretty much it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dan. I'm 1/3 of a company called the Detective Society. I've brought a game along because it's sometimes quite hard to demonstrate what we do. It looks like this. It's much like a board game. My co-founders come from an escape room design background, and during COVID, we wanted to kind of bottle up the feeling of being in an escape room and put it into a board game format, which is what we did. And we chose an episodic format for that, so we wanted to tell a story that happens over a number of episodes, hence being here today. Thank you very much for having us.
I am Andrew. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I own Escape My Room. I think we signed our lease in 2014, so almost 10 years or just about 10 years ago. I came about the episodic format because I was sick and in the hospital for about 3 weeks, and I couldn't do anything except have these crazy fever dreams. And so in one of those fever dreams, I think I don't know, and we had signed the lease probably 2 weeks before I ended up in the hospital, and so it was like the one thing I could do was just kind of think and imagine these stories, and so that's kind of where our idea came from.
Hi, I'm Lukas from Vienna, Austria, not Australia. We have schnitzel, not kangaroos. And I basically started with my business partners, with anyone else in this industry. We played escape room games, and we wanted to expand on that concept, and so we tried a little bit storytelling. So we started 2015 with our first game, and we made about this game was chapter 1, and so we made a trilogy, and everything we did since then was building up on this universe, which started with a classical escape room topic, you break into a room from a corrupt congressman, and since then we have this criminals universe, which is fun, but yeah.
Can I borrow your... There we go. Okay, so you've each approached this from sort of different angles by the sounds of it, and you all have different numbers of experiences that back into each other. Some of you bordering on the extreme numerically, and others. You're at 2 at the moment, right?
We're at 2, third to be built next year.
Third to be built. Okay, so from a sort of a why point of view, I mean, Andrew, you've covered that it was illness and insanity that drove you to do this.
Yes.
Right,
very much so.
That's the same for all of us.
What came first then, the chicken or the egg? Why why was it that you chose episodic gaming? Were you looking at it from a business perspective, or was it storytelling-wise?
I think I come from more of a storytelling world, even though I'm not necessarily a writer, and I'm not necessarily, I'm not sure what I am exactly, but no, I came from it from a storytelling perspective of like, I want to tell these really cool stories. I'm based in New Orleans, and in part of these fever dreams was thinking about the history of New Orleans and thinking about these crazy families who claim to have gone back to the founding of the city in the 1700s, which is old in the United States. And so thinking about one of these families and how, there are these family stories that exist that are real, that people tell, and I kind of wanted to take that idea, turn it into the background for our escape room. And so our escape room was based around this fictional but could be real family that, went back to the founding of the city, and each kind of room would touch on a different family member or touch on a different, little mini story that some family member would tell about the city.
So do all your games tell a linear story, or?
No, yeah, so we have we're down to 3 now since COVID, but the 3 we have are different family members, but not in necessarily a linear story. Or we kind of went backwards. We kind of started in like the 80s or 90s of 1990, and then went backwards into the the 50s and the 30s, and then the 1800s. So we kind of went backwards, and they're not. They do relate to each other, but they're not necessarily chapters like you have, not necessarily one right after the other. So,
Lukas, you said yours was based all in the same universe. Does that mean there's a linearity to yours, or is it all come as you like kind of approach to it?
A little bit of both, to be honest. Deterministic, I already knew how I want to do it, the first 3 games. But in the end, I managed to make a loop from the story, which I do not want to spoil. But basically, if you start with the second game, afterwards the third game, and you can go back to the first game, and the same with the third game. So all the trilogy is a loop, and everything we built up since then was like expanding on the universe, connecting the games even more together, and even with the online games during COVID. We had our 4th game going underground, which is like a standalone game, but still in universe. We connected with both of our online games, the story from the trilogy and the 4th game. But yeah, this was like I couldn't stop expanding on that. Just when I wrote it was naturally for me. Okay, this makes sense, and yeah. So this is how it happened.
I see. Okay, and Bob and Nick, yours are direct sequels to each other, right?
They are, but they can be played out of sync. It is better to play them sequentially.
Yeah.
But as a standalone game, they still can be played alone.
How do you get your players involved in the second game or further games down the line if they aren't aware that there's that first set to cover?
So we went with a thriller style game, and we also incorporated live actors. Now, when we had our first escape rooms, Hysteria, the first things people would say to us is, "It's not scary, is it? There's no live actors, are there?" And we were like, no. And we decided to make a whole company based on thriller and live actor, which was, at the time, probably not the best business decision ever, paying for 2 members of staff, 1 actor, 1 games master or host. But the building itself that we're in is a Napoleonic war fort. And we wanted to create an experience that lent itself well to the surroundings. And with a fort, we could have gone with war, we could have gone with maybe something ghost-like, but the thriller element of serial killer was what really drew us. And we knew when you have a protagonist and you can take his story into new levels, you can, amp it up. Like we're doing a Halloween edition, so we can make dark versions of our games as well.
Cool.
Don't remember your original question, Dave.
No. All right. Let me recover it.
Do you want to answer?
So if a player does start out of sequence for you,
Yeah.
Is it the through line of the actors that you use to keep players sort of aware that they're in a bigger story, or does it actually not matter what order they're covering stuff in?
I think because naturally in this country, escape rooms are very puzzle driven. Where we decided to have actors involved, that organically allowed us to tell story better. And then obviously once we'd had the first chapter, we then decided how can we link the two stories together. But obviously the majority of people aren't as enthusiastic as us, shall we say. So they will come along and not even know it's chapter based. But thankfully they do tend to book chapter 1 first.
Yeah, it's called chapter 1.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's very clear that it's chapter 1. However, we still have people that just casual players, shall we say. But we had to make the game stand alone. That's the reality, because people will only come and play those games on their own. But from our point of view, I mean, we all tell stories to ourselves every second of every day. And we've always been strong about story within our games being the glue between the puzzles, making it all make sense and give you something more than just a puzzle fest, basically. So yeah, that grew quite organically on the want to have live elements in the game.
Yeah, fair enough. And Dan, obviously your format is sort of predicated by almost a book-like format where there are chapters to it, but each one formulates part of a further story, right? Your players, I assume, understand that when they're going into it. Do you get many who start halfway through one of these book-like formats? And how do you cover player engagement from that point on?
Yeah, so within that box that I just showed, there's actually 3 episodes, and they form that whole adventure. And we've got multiple different adventures. You can play any of the adventures you want without playing one that we've previously made a few years before. That's absolutely fine. But what we do recommend is that within that adventure, you play each episode in order. If, because we know people like to have like a weekly games night or something like that, and they invite different friends round. If, for example, you haven't played a couple of the episodes, all you need to do is catch up on what's happened, and that's enough to know enough to carry on playing. So you don't need anything from the previous episodes, but you do kind of want to know a little bit about the story, and someone, perhaps the host of the games night, can kind of fill you in on that, really. So they're specifically designed to allow you to play at any point, as long as you've picked up a little bit of the story from people that have already done it.
Gotcha. I suppose it must be a difficult metric to measure in that case, but do you find that you get more people coming to play your game, or customers as who buy your game, based on having played part of it with friends as well? Is that...
Yeah, so when we started, we was actually selling individual episodes. We now sell them as complete boxes. We kind of tried to make the end of each episode to be a bit of a cliffhanger, so it made you want to play the next one. Since then, we've sort of tried to kind of create little kind of mini introductory games, really, to lure people in, so they don't have to make the big purchase straight away. They play a little demo. We've actually got a demo here today in the other room. I can't remember the name of the room. You know where it is, right? In the partner
downstairs
section,
one.
yeah. So, and it's like a little kind of 10-minute game that lures people into how the games work and that sort of thing. And I think that works well. We had an online game as well that people could just play for like 10 minutes to kind of lure them in. Because you're sort of asking people to commit to a big box that they're going to order through the post from a strange company they've never heard of, without kind of any kind of context, really. So yeah, I think luring people in with a mini experience is quite good.
Giving them a taster, as it were, beforehand. Cool. Okay, and what are the sort of challenges been like designing narratives that spread across games? Because obviously with a more traditional format, you've got like a single point, your story is from start to finish, and somebody mentioned, you mentioned cliffhangers, Dan. So as a way to hook people onto the next bit, and you market them all together. For other formats, Andrew, for instance, yours, how do you get people to engage with the next bit?
Sure. So, and to touch on your bit about the I don't know, how do we make sure everything is in the story world, I think was part of the question too. I think that is somewhat of a mess for us because we have a bunch of different documents with different family trees. I'm pretty open with our staff and with anyone can kind of make changes to the lore and to the history of the family. I think that makes it way more interesting. But then the consequence of that is having to go and like if we're writing a new story, where does it fit in? How does it, how do we not like contradict something that we've already done before? It's not a huge deal. Like not that many people play us versus, go to Disney World or something like that. But we still like to keep it in the world and have it make sense in the world. For cliffhangers for us, it's not so much about cliffhangers, it's more about just getting to know more of the family or more of the, one room may mention a mysterious invention or a mysterious machine, which then is found out more about in another room. So, and we use bonus puzzles a bit in our rooms, and those bonus puzzles are kind of what tends to link the rooms together more than the actual room does. And that's kind of an accidental benefit of that. Enthusiasts are more likely to get to those bonus puzzles anyway, and enthusiasts are more likely to be interested in the lore and in the connectivity between the rooms.
Gotcha. So elements of your rooms that form like a major part of one room will end up being almost Easter egg-ish.
Yes, yeah, correct. And that's how we've kind of handled it for the most part. So, and we use the name Delaport as our family name, and that that's written in all of our rooms and all of our family members. So that's kind of the very in your face way. But the Easter eggs are kind of more of what ties things together for us.
And Lukas, in your case, are you the master and commander of the world that kind of sits there, and how do you keep that all in one piece?
Funny thing, I wanted to expand something about cliffhangers, but it's also fitting. I wrote this basically because my mind is a little bit crazy, and that's theme like with Andrew, and I just wrote it and then expanded on it, and it never stopped. And I hate sometimes myself because the worst cliffhanger we ever had and made, I always not trying to make too bad of a cliffhanger because then I still want the people to have a finish and a finale. But the problem was during the COVID times, we did the online game. And the first game we did like in basically 1.5 months in 90-hour weeks. And then, okay, this is cool. Let's make episode 1 cliffhanger, and we do the second game. But after the first game, we were so burnt out. and then it started already, okay, we did it was fine, but we can do it better. So we're trying to expand on it. And then it's an online game. The pandemic after 2 years ended, and it was like, we have to do the second game because you owe it to your audience. And I didn't want to do a second game, but I needed to do it. And so it took us 10 months, and we overdid it, of course, with the engine we worked with. And I'm really proud on that game, but it's still a point-and-click adventure. So it's not.
I don't think I ever played the second one. I played the first one, and then I got bored by the time the second one came around.
I hated. I laughed, but I have a love-hate relationship with the second game because it was so much more effort than the first one, and we did develop it for 10 months, and we needed to finish it because it's like we did a huge cliffhanger, and we did finish it after 10 months developing, like 2 years after the first day of the pandemic, and nobody cares about this game. So we did it just like for our well-being, but I still have a love-hate relationship with that game. But we did finish it. But if you do a cliffhanger, you owe it to your audience, and you do it. But still. I never do it.
What were your sales like on the second one?
Pardon?
What were your sales like on the second one?
My sales were shit, like for the second one. It's like, of course it was shit. I knew it already when we developed it. It would never be like this revenue we got from the first game. Yeah. But if I do not finish it, I hated it. I never do a cliffhanger like that again. Never. And we did so much more with the engine. We developed it for 10 months. It was not worth it. But it's still like, we did it. But yeah. After that, never doing that cliffhanger again. Yeah. But yeah, we have a good finally.
Do you think that the cliffhanger problem was because your story was open-ended and you knew you wanted to go on, but without a clear goal as to where to go, or do you think it was just because you...
It was like I knew already where I want to go with this, and I was like, okay, it's already so much work, let's do it episodic, and if it's a success, we can do another game, but what I did forget is that when we do a game, we stay not on the same level. Yeah. We try to expand on a level and do the next, and I shouldn't have done that with an online game. So that was like, was a mistake, but still I'm glad I did it.
So for everybody then, with regards to designing like multi-part stories or games, are you designing them with like a holistic view, like you've got an end goal? Thanks very much. Do you have them with an end goal in sight? Do you know what the whole thing's going to be before you start, or are you just sort of laying your first bricks and then seeing, where you can go next, what you think an interesting story will be from that point on? How much like writing a book is it, I guess? To everybody.
For us, it was definitely laying the bricks. When we first started Unsolved, we'd had experience before. Whenever we opened a normal game, we'd have people waiting and we'd have pre-sale bookings. And then when we opened Unsolved Mysteries, hired an actor, got a brand new premises and spent the most money we ever have on a set, we had no bookings coming through. So all of our previous players just were not interested in the live actor, horror, thriller element. It was really quite scary. But we then tapped into a whole new market, and very slowly people did start feeding. And once that seed was planted, when we opened the basement up, just under about a year and a half later, it was flooded like a normal game. But what we done with the first one is we gave people at the end a hero complex. So you finish the game feeling like a saviour, a hero, to then bring you back for more of that kind of feeling, which...
So do you know where... Because your storyline covers the events of a serial killer's career in serial killing,
exactly right.
So do you know where that finishes? Is there going to be a denouement at the end of that?
Yes, there will be, on the last chapter.
Do we?
In my head there is, darling, yes.
I think, sort of moving on a little bit from what Nick said, is that a lot of the people that were coming to play serial killer games, they wanted something different. So we were kind of driven a little bit by the feedback from the first chapter of what customers and, I suppose, these people that want cheap thrills, which we didn't want too much in our games as far as scare maze style stuff. We still wanted to keep it fairly structured around puzzle and story. We were led a little bit by our customers. But I think because of the nature of the fact that we've got actors in there that you are trying to save, they are someone you need to work alongside in our games. They're not there to scare you. That gives so much, because we need to work around all the games we're going to do at Unsolved will have actors in them. So as soon as you have a character, and what you can build around that character is so much more than just a puzzle.
So many teams create a bond with that character as well. It's ridiculous. Like, you post them online and they think they're mums and stuff. Like, they get a very...
Like they're real people.
So you're going to use that in order to keep people coming back. That almost relationship that...
They do.
For sure.
They will call up and they'll say, what actor's on? Can it be this person?
And people come back and play a different game with a different actor who gives, a different feel and a different vibe to someone else.
So, Dan, yours obviously, when I first experienced Detective Society, I went through the Kickstarter for it. Oh, yeah. And so I got my pieces episode by episode.
Thank you very much.
you guys must have had an idea of where you were going with that right from the get-go, right? Planned the whole product out? Right? Surely?
Yeah. We sort of had a rough overview of it. So the first few games were 6 episodes long. We had a rough overview of the plot. The rest of it was sort of like laying the tracks when you're standing on the front of the train and you're trying to lay the tracks before the train comes off the track. So it was a little bit like that. Certainly from a puzzle design perspective, we was right in the middle of COVID. My co-founders were on furlough, so they were kind of getting paid to be at home, and we kind of thought, well, let's give this a try. And we sort of committed to an episode a month, and we tried to that was a real kind of, to basically create a board game one every month for 6 months was a real kind of frantic time, but it was the only thing we was doing. You didn't have everything else going on.
So you put yourself on the chopping block for it. You were like, right, I don't know what episode 3 is going to look like.
No.
I know kind of where we're going.
Yeah.
Oh, Dan, I thought you were going to be my saviour here and say that you'd planned the entire thing meticulously before you began.
I would say there's a bit more thought now. And, we've learned some lessons along the way. And also because we've got all the games in a single box and we're ordering, we've got to order that from a manufacturer's, we was printing them in the UK originally, like from a local printers around the corner. So we could sort of put the print order in one day and it'd be here the next day. We can't do that now. It's taken like 9 months to get a game delivered to us now. So we need a bit more thought now, and it has taken longer. But back then it was sort of quick, we've got to get the next episode out the door.
So
whatever it may be.
Speed driven, just whatever convenience allows you to get it done.
And we were playing a lot of games. My co-founders and I are big into theme parks, and we would, when they were open again, we would stand in the queue at a theme park, and you've got all this crazy stuff happening around you, and it kind of sparks some ideas. Oh, that would make a good puzzle, or that would make a good puzzle. And then the kind of episodes kind of came from that, really, just in a creative space and seeing what we can come up with, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And Andrew, you said yours was come up with whilst you were in hospital for an extended period. Does that mean that you had an end goal in sight before you started them?
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
I mean, no, no.
Okay, all right.
I can say what we're inspired by. I think we're inspired by, I can be inspired by anything, and then in that moment I will go and write a story and fit it into our world. And I think, sometimes it is an obvious fit and sometimes it's not. So
cool. So would you all say that was a bad way to do things now, or do you reckon it's working?
I don't think
out
it's
for you?
good. I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's just different ways of doing it. I think you kind of have to be flexible when you're designing something and you're building something. It's also years past, between different experiences, and as we all know, the industry has gotten more and more advanced, and in a good way. And so you kind of have to adapt to that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Flexibility is the word I think we all need. But I can help you a little bit out.
That's great.
The thing is, with the trilogy, I knew how it would end. I didn't know back then how I loop it. Mm-hmm. And the 4th game, Going Underground, was basically, for me back then, we did finish this. Okay, what do we do next? And for me, it was the whole concept was, okay, this is from us, the future. And then we expanded on the story. Then we had the online games connecting. And since 4 years now, I think I know I wanted to build another game, which expanding on Going Underground and Crime Runners. But I really wanted to be the last Crime Runners universe game, because I really want to get me free from this universe a little bit. And when I do something next, I want to do completely not be limited again. The problem is, in these times, we weren't able to do that. And now the concept went so big that I need to do 2 games about it. And so it's already, I know how it will be finished, the game, and everything with the stories we had. And so I know the end already. I'm not sure when I can build it because I need too much money for it right now. But if I build it, which I want, then it will be 2 games. So yeah, it's
And you're happy with sort of making a rod for your own back by saying, I need to finish the story like this.
No, I have I really want to build the games because the concept went so big in the story, and I realized I cannot cramp this in one game. Mm-hmm. It would be insane. I do not want to rush people to like 150 square meters in 1 hour. Or 200 square meters, and I want to expand it on a little bit because still want we pipeline our games, and I want to have in one set part. I want to have being there like at least 15 minutes. That there is a game flow and environment story telling, and so there is a finish in my head. So maybe the world will see it one day, but yeah,
Cool.
But maybe it will change.
Down to brass tacks then. Bob and Nick, you said that it had unlocked like a whole new market of people for you, right? Would you? But you also said
Total weirdos.
Yeah, right. Scare people, man. But you also said that everybody was kind of checking in with you with your previous games beforehand. So did you go into this whether they were that sort of game? So did you go into any of this confident that you had a market for an episodic format, or was it just you lucked out because you weren't catering to scare people and so? Nice.
So excited.
I lost my train of thought now. So did you go into it knowing that you had someone to sell this to, basically?
You'd like to think so.
Yeah, right.
But we were wrong.
Okay.
Like, there's always going to be someone to
Cool.
sell your games to.
We love the idea.
We thought it was great.
Yeah.
And so all the
Generally
people
what we
would...
do, we
Yeah.
think it's all right. Everyone else feels sure.
No, but it doesn't work like that. Like
No.
we've built a spaceship, and you'd think
remember
Star
it.
Wars is a huge franchise. People love that. No, it just does all right. Like and it was the same when we opened Thriller. Like when you see other escape rooms in other countries that are thriller or horror based, they are really, really highly ranked. We watered ours down so much from the original kind of thing that we wanted to do to make it available, like better for public consumption. And it was only once the cabin had taken off after, it took a good year, I think, for people, it really to settle into people who had to be kind of persuaded to come along, and then it was fine from the basement onwards.
Gotcha.
We got that rush, but...
So did you make a compromise on like your idea right from the get-go, just in order to entice people in, to get them, like, almost give them a taste, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
I would say so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think we had to water it down a little bit because we weren't trying to create a scare maze. It was we still love our puzzles, and we still wanted the game to fundamentally be about puzzle solving,
Yeah.
rather than just scaring the wits out of people. That said, we couldn't water it down too much, and I think people that come to play, we kind of had to break the back of the fact that most games with live actors, certainly in the UK, are there to scare you and put you off solving puzzles, where we tried to have to balance the two together.
Yeah.
So yeah, the compromise was probably on how much we give people and how scary it is. Really, that's kind of the compromise we had to make. Like,
It's not scary at all.
it's
No,
not,
But there are
I
people
know.
who won't go in.
Yeah.
Like there are people who'll come out. There's people who've cried. It's ridiculous. Like the people's levels are just
I think the difference you put is your live actors are there to hold hands, not bite hands, right?
exactly right. And
but
it
they don't
is-
believe you.
And then
Yeah,
it's
no, of
and it's the
course.
set that creates the immersion. So your actor is not there for scare. It's the set solely to give you that feeling of a sense that something could happen rather
Yeah.
than it's going to happen. But
Yeah.
that can be just too much for some people, and they'll cry, leave. It's a really, really
They're my
weird.
favourites.
It's a really weird genre to tap into because you're not full horror,
No.
and you're kind of teetering on the edge the whole
Well, if it was full horror, everybody would be dead by the end of it, and you wouldn't get an episode 2.
Definitely not.
That would be a struggle. Yeah. Dan, a similar sort of question. Obviously, yours is a different format, so you're kind of like you're selling it as the story already. So I don't suppose you're beholden to make any like compromises on how that story's told in order to get people in on the next one and the next one.
Yeah, I think we're lucky in that we've probably got a little bit more leeway to tell the stories because there are no live actors, right? So our costs are lower. So we try and tell story through like voice calls. There's like so in our games there's a big kind of digital world. So it's not just what's in the box. If we've created like a fake bank, for example, that you've got to hack into, and you have to go on that bank's website and find some details, and it might pop up in the bottom corner like a little live chat thing, and you're sort of chatting to the bank to try and steal some information, and you might have to make phone calls and all that sort of stuff. So we try and deliver the story in those bits kind of around the puzzle in a similar sort of way. So yeah, the puzzles are kind of there intertwined with the story, I suppose.
But you have kind of changed your format from that first episodic, you get each bit chapter at a time. Now you're selling them as books almost.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a bad analogy, and I'm sticking to it.
They're still episodic within the box. So there's this box here is 3 episodes. So you would still probably play one box 1 week, the next episode the next week, and the next episode the next week.
Why did you change it?
Money.
Yes.
So yeah, to cut a long story short, when we was doing this from our bedroom and we was printing locally, it was all kind of very slapdash. And as we've grown, we've needed to move to more kind of bigger mass production, I suppose. And what we would find was the number of people that played episode 1 in Adventure would be up here, and the number of people that made it to episode 6 would be down here, because like anything, you naturally lose people along the way. If you TV series, video games, they're all the same. Gradually, the number of players just falls off for whatever reason. They go and find something else to do. So what we would find was we had in our bedroom warehouse, we had tons and tons and tons of episode 6 left and no episodes 1 left. But of course the manufacturers want a minimum order, the same level for whatever you're ordering. So we're sort of having to spend tons and tons of money ordering these different quantities of box and then being left with the wrong number of box, and it just became too expensive to kind of maintain it that way. So by putting all of the episodes into a single box, you're now selling 1 product instead of 6 products, and that just makes it a lot easier from a logistical perspective.
I have a question. Is each box a different storyline, or do all the boxes link up together?
Yeah, so this is Murder on the Moon, which is about a murder on the moon, weirdly. No, no, thankfully no. I think the fact that it's a board game, it's not quite as scary. But each box is different. So that's about a murder on the moon. We've got a sort of a fairy tale one, which is a bit of a spin-off. We've got like a spy one. We've got a sort of an Elon Musk robots thing. All the kind of classic themes. And then what we do is, you sort of mentioned it earlier on about Easter eggs, is we'll have callbacks to previous games that aren't really integral to the story, but they kind of flesh out the world a little bit. So if you're a regular player, you'll go, oh, I remember this fake bank from the first series, and it's sort of quite a fun little kind of Easter egg, I suppose.
Have you found a number of episodes that people, an ideal number of episodes to have, like 3 or 6 or 5 or something like that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It really does vary. So we've got some people that constantly message us saying, when are you going to release another 6-episode adventure? And other people that are playing the 3-episode adventures and really like that. So I don't necessarily think people really care how long it is in terms of number of episodes, as long as what you're delivering is an interesting and fun story. We've got some one-off games that we're working on. We haven't done that yet, so just a single episode, basically. And they're quite nice for kind of, like, people that aren't sure yet, again, that kind of introduction. But yeah, no, I haven't found any kind of stats that said people prefer one or the other.
Yeah. You don't think it sort of helps the player if they know what they're getting into beforehand? Or
yeah, I think you've got to advertise that it is going to be a 6-episode adventure for sure. Yeah, because otherwise you're going to be... We sort of say you need to play all 6 to get the conclusion to that story. Yeah. If you don't say that to people, then they're kind of a bit thrown off when they sort of finish a game and it's not quite...
Do you think that would work in other formats, like the escape room formats that everybody else is sort of working in?
Oh, I think it's hard. I think it's anytime you have multiple experiences that all require the other one, it's always tricky, like you were saying. That's why I was curious if there's is there a number that people seem to like 3, but I guess you always are going to lose people every step of the way.
Yeah, I mean, we originally got the idea from, we was watching shows like Line of Duty on BBC, and there was a show called Vigil. Do you remember that? Anyone remember that? About submarines and stuff like that. And some people would sit and binge them all, right, and watch them all over a weekend. And some of the shows like Line of Duty, I remember it was a real big media event each week. The new episode come out, and everyone was talking about the new episode, a bit like Game of Thrones used to do. And we kind of, when we started, we was like that. We wanted our community to kind of be talking about the next thing, the next episode that's released online, and we did get quite a bit of that. And that's sadly one of the things that we've lost a bit now in releasing them all together. So I think it's probably not about the length, but about that kind of shared experience of talking about this new event that's happened in the show or happened in the game. And I guess you could do something similar in Escape Room World, perhaps.
Andrew, do you find that player engagement is better with a sort of social element to it? And if so, do you promote that at all? Do you
What do you mean by social?
In the same way that Dan mentioned, chatting about it gets people engaged in what's going to happen next. Do you find that's not something that you can engage with?
Oh, like our hosts talking to the guests as a whole experience. No, I do think that helps a huge amount and gets people coming back or interested. We're in New Orleans. We're a tourist market. I think 95% of our customers are tourists, and maybe 50 to 80% are not necessarily enthusiasts, and then we get 20% of hardcore enthusiasts. So we're kind of a weird situation there in that, I'd say the majority of people don't care what they're doing. They're just like out of the heat and out of the rain, unfortunately. But they have a good time, and we will convert them, to playing another room sometimes. But I don't know. I think it's more for my own sanity that we have this world linked in a way. I mean, I certainly we do it for the players, but it's also for my own sanity to have limitations when I'm thinking about a new concept or design, fitting it into the world. And also just that's what I would want to do if I played another place, is I would want to go somewhere that has kind of this holistic world and just immersive experience. We have a very immersive experience from kind of right when you step foot on the property to when you leave, and that's kind of what I would like in an escape room. So that's what we've done.
Bob said it before in the beginning, that I think we as a designers, we spend a lot of more time in the story, and players are not that much into 100%. That.
I don't see any of it.
I'm still happy we are doing this, but it's
But that one person that comes along and gets it.
Oh, I love them. They are the best.
I
love them so much. Even if they get the jokes and everything. Yeah, but it always makes me happy if some people ask about and can expand on the story and they are amazed at what we all thought about it. But still, like you are spot with tourists, 95% of our players do not get at all that we have this world built. Yeah, it's the harsh truth about if you would recommend episodic storytelling, do it for yourself. If you want to do it, but it's not because you should do it. It's not a revenue.
I'm sure it does convert a small amount, but it's but we're also I mean, I haven't done either of your experiences, but I'm thinking all of ours are relatively well liked and well received if we're up on the stage, and so we already have a reputation and already have people, enthusiasts who are seeking out our experiences that if we had something that was not linked, they'd probably still seek us out. But I do think
I agree. Yeah. I do think that even the games when they are designed even better because you are in this world, you're expanding on this world. And there is thoughts going into it. But still, if you go for the average player, they will not care, and you have to accept this as a creative, which is sometimes hard, but now we accept it, I think. But yeah.
So would you all say that the challenges reap enough benefits for you that they're worth it, of putting together episodic games?
I do like to do it, so yeah, for me it's worth it.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think, like I said, it's for my own sanity that we do this, and for having limitations. I think the limitations are good in the sense that it can create something more interesting because you have this set
Yeah, it does breed customer loyalty when you've got these kind of episodic games that are linked both in style and narrative. We've certainly found that. And the other thing, you guys might find this as well, is that there are physical things that we can reuse. So, like, we can build this, I keep using the example because it's one on top of my head, but we can build this website for this fake bank, and we can use it again and again and again across multiple stories, and there's economies of scale there as we create more adventures. So I'm sure that'll be the same in a physical location as well.
Yeah.
The way I've kind of always seen it is when you think of real big blockbusters like The Godfather, Rocky films, Harry Potter. Now, you might not like all of those games. They might not have films. So some of you might love Harry Potter. It might be the best thing. And at least you've got that whole set. And there will be one of them that's going to be your favourite within that set.
Always number 2.
But they're always... No. But they're all there to play. Rather than touching on what you said earlier, which seemed to have worked from you, when you watch something like Line of Duty, TV programmes with quite good writing, I'll sit there with my family and I'm the only one who understands. They just sit there and watch for the sake of watching, and they don't take any of the plot, the subplot or anything, so I have to explain it to them afterwards. With a complicated line for an escape room or anything that we're trying to portray through, that is pretty much my family watching Line of Duty, unfortunately. So the way I think it's the best way to look at it is look at it from just the titles of like Rocky 1, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4. One of them will be your favourite, but they're still, as a collection, really solid films.
Yeah, they work each individually.
Yeah.
Okay, we're running up against time for Q&A a little bit, but I did want to ask quickly, what do you think is next for episodic content? Are you doing everything you can? Is this it? Is this how it works? Or do you think there are different ways to tell stories episodically?
I think it's totally, there are a lot of different concepts. Like for escape rooms, there are like 1,000 concepts and they all could work or not work. I think it depends on the designer and the author what you do with episodic content. So I would not imagine or be able to tell what's next for episodic gaming. I only know what's next for Crime Runners, maybe. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm similar in that, I don't know necessarily what's going to happen next. I think for us, everything was always in this one world to begin with, and everything that we've done has stemmed from this world. So we're working on other, like, more outdoors or more open world stuff or more website or digital content, and all of that is still going to play a part in this world that we've created. So
similar, really. Who knows? I think about some of the stuff that's happening in the video game world with these sort of live service games where they have a sort of a season, and within that season stuff happens, and you see that in experiences like Phantom Peak, where they'll create a season of content. I think we're seeing that in board games as well, and tabletop games. Dungeons and Dragons has had a real resurgence after Stranger Things and stuff like that. So I think creating kind of content for a time that's sort of transient, comes and goes, and then the next content comes along, is an exciting thing and much more popular, particularly with the integration of digital technology in physical board games as well, digital hybrids, basically.
Yeah, I like that idea. We've obviously got lots of different ideas, often driven by finances, sadly, rather than our creative wants. But I'd like the idea of, because when we finish 3 chapters, we'd like to be able to set it that you can come and play all 3 chapters as one experience. How we link those together and keep the immersion from one to the other, not quite sure on yet. But yeah, I really enjoy building the characters, linking the stories, however subtle that might be. Not necessarily more than a standalone game, but yeah, I don't necessarily, there's still series and films being created, and I don't think that'll ever stop, will it? We all like characters and stories and can, get stuck into them.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, we're almost running out of time, so I'll throw it out to any questions. If this has stirred your brain and you do have some questions, yes, Brendan.
Brendan.
I'll go to the same room. So, In the immersive world, you're kind of free to create stories on the fly, and in escape rooms, you're often following structured paths through them. And so your storytelling is limited. Where are the places before, in, and after the game that you're helping to build that story?
I can try to answer it. I think if the story comes first in your mind, and then you design, I think the game develops itself for me. When I have the story, I know where I want to go. I know the set pieces. I know, for example, I knew I wanted to go underground, with going underground in a mine, and there's a military station, and it naturally came up to me to make like this occupation time, to have that the British guys, it was the Brits, digged into the mountain, and there they find stuff. And so it naturally came the story part, then the set parts, and then from the set parts, the puzzle pieces. So everything involved from the story. The story was the beginning. So yeah, you are right if, of course, you think that the story can limit you, but also the story can expand and help you design the stuff. And if it goes that way, that the story comes first, I think it helps so much to design.
I think he was also saying, the story in an escape room is, like, you don't have time to tell a story in an escape room because you are, sorry to, and I actually did a whole talk on this, I think back in Up the Game, I don't know, 5 years ago or something, or I've lost, it's probably more than that now, but no, we use email communication. We have information on our website. We have, we send an email after the game is played. We also have our waiting room, and there's even a pre-room to the waiting room, and a post room after they get out. That's all kind of integrated into one sort of, into this family and into this, you're coming into their house, into their mansion. So, and our characters, our attendants, as we call them, are, each play a character of the family, of the house. And so they can tell their own kind of story when they're coming in to link it all together. But yeah, I think like in an escape room, their time is limited, but with, I don't know, there's all these different touch points that aren't necessarily in the room that you can build story, and you can either atmospheric or with words or acting.
But in our first games, we had a lot of video files and audio files, and we stopped doing that, and we switched much more to environment storytelling, which works much more in escape rooms, because you tell the story during the set and the puzzles, and not like, oh, you have to watch now 2 minutes video. We did this. The first 3 games was a mistake. Nobody, you limit them from puzzling and from game flowing, and so environment storytelling, I think, is the key to tell a story.
Yeah.
So we have a kind of like a plea video, because you are meant to go in as survivors. We tell a basic story as the game's host, but everything else is from a plea video, like it would be shot, like you're watching it from the news. And that, because the story is quite short and sweet, you know the person who is on the TV, that is the actual person in the game. So the trailer gets changed for every single actor that goes in. So the person pleading is the one that you actually are going in to save. And so that creates quite a nice bond, because you've seen that person, then you go in, and once you've unlocked them, found them, that is the person that they've got that, they know that's who they've got to save. So that's how we create that kind of bond that way.
Own a normal escape room, and then you've got the other one. Do you find that the episodic games have more of a following than, say, your other games? Do you feel like it makes a difference? Or because I know from my experience that I feel like people are just like, they just want to play a game, right? But do you feel like having that sort of chapter thing adds an extra element to it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think it's maybe a little bit difficult to gauge, but from my point of view, I think players, they love our actors. Our actors are the main selling point. I mean, the sets and the games, obviously, we like to think make sense and are a standard escape room. But the characters, that's what I think adds the extra sauce, I suppose, that may bring people back over and above just a normal.
So do you think if it didn't have the characters and it was just the follow-on story, it wouldn't make this? It wouldn't have an impact.
It wouldn't be the same, no, for sure.
We get more people messaging us saying when is chapter 3 open than when's a new game at Hysteria getting opened. So we get that quite regularly. When's the next chapter? When's the next chapter? So I would say.
So it sounds like it does make an impact.
I think it makes
Yeah.
an impact. I think people are more invested. Like at Hysteria, where we've got 3 different themes. Some themes are just for someone, some aren't. So some people have come back to our new theme, survival, and then we haven't seen some of them. But when anyone comes to play at the full, they are following through those chapters. It's mostly certain, isn't it? They love it.
Yeah, sure. But I personally think it is the actors that we choose and what they bring to the experience. You can't match it really. You know, that interaction and that immersion just takes them to another level with having those characters in there, and they're really good at their jobs. That helps.
Yeah. But bad for money, like paying two people per game, and we don't charge really any more than most escape room companies in Kent. So financially, bad decision. But it's lovely to watch, lovely to run.
You're happy tanking that?
We'll take
Happy
it.
tanking that, yeah.
So it's a long game, Dave.
I've heard some very long games in this game. So, do you think that the difference between that is related to the sorts of towns that you're in, or the sorts of places? Because Andrew, you mentioned that 95% of your customer base is probably, or 90% or thereabouts, was tourism, that sort of thing. And Lukas, you sort of made a similar point. Whereas it sounds like that's sort of a little conflicting. Like actually, you probably get more people coming back because of that. Do you think that's just locals or
No, they're
from all over?
Plus the fort, renowned for horror, Halloween. So I think people come there anyway and gravitate to that place, knowing that. That probably helps us.
You mean the least haunted fortress in Great Britain?
exactly right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody on stage, for being on stage with me and for answering daft questions and asking better ones.